The opinions expressed on the radio program by the hosts, co hosts, guests, and call in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
It's another Thoughtful Thursday, and you're on the air with Ron and Reason for Reason. So we come on the air today, and something significant just happened. The president's big, beautiful bill passed through the House and is now bound for his desk to be signed. As he said, he wanted this bill on his desk by July 4th. So he managed to strong arm, negotiate, and basically cajole his way through the Republican Party to get them back in lockstep to sign this disastrous bill. Other than Trump and the wealthiest people in this country, who wanted this damn thing? Let's be realistic. This bill cuts into Medicaid, Medicare, cuts into food assistance programs like SNAP. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There'll be more cuts, I'm sure, because Trump is single-minded in his pursuit of this tax cut, this $4 trillion tax cut, to make sure that billionaires like himself and his other billionaire friends don't have to pay their fair share of taxes. So for the rest of us, we are left as usual holding the bag. And the bag, what's in it? Well, ain't no money, that's for sure. It ain't that kind of bag. This is a bag filled with IOUs. So far, we know that within the first 10 years, this bill is going to add $3.3 trillion to the already ballooning deficit. In the Republican Party, they are the party of fiscal responsibility. Well, where's the fiscal responsibility in this monstrosity? There have even been some Republican senators who said, you know what, I'm not going to seek re-election because we realize how disastrous this bill is for their constituents and for their careers. I said this for some time, and I'll say it again. Next year, we're going to have, presumably, the midterm elections. How can a Republican Party go to their constituents and tell them, hey, send me back to Capitol Hill? What the hell for? You just signed a bill that signed away their health care, signed away food that will go on their children's table. You have sided with a man that is cutting education, health care, basic staples for American families. And yet, in just over a year, these people are going to be saying, hey, look, give us another chance. Let us go back up there and finish the work of President Donald J. Trump. But what kind of work is it? Since Trump took office, and it hasn't been 7 months yet, Trump's personal wealth has increased by about $2.5 billion. That's billion with a B. How many average American households have seen any increase in their paychecks, in their Social Security checks, any sort of subsidy you may receive? Have you seen an increase? Trump is poised to get a $400 million 747 from Qatar. Now, this is the same guy that said, well, Qatar is a sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East. That was in his first administration. Well, now that we're in his second administration, everything has changed apparently. Now, the people of Qatar, the Qatar government, they're not so bad after all. Especially if they're going to give me a $400 million plane. And then he comes back to America after his successful Middle East trip, which was a trip for his family and for uh, the Trump Foundation, the Trump family. He comes back with his $400 million gift. And he tells the American people, folks, you're just going to have to hold on for a while. Just be patient. Things will turn around. What he didn't say is that he wants us to foot the bill to retrofit this plane so that it'll have the same capabilities of the other two Air Force One jets. What do you need it for? We have two perfectly sound, airworthy 747s that are going to be basically, at least one of them will basically be put into mothballs because he's got to have this one. Average working class and poor people are going to lose their health care, but he's got a new jet. Children are going to lose food that would be on their table. That's going away. But he's able to shake down CBS to the tune of $16 million. I have this one. And that doesn't include the other shakedowns like the major law firms that he's shaking down. And he's got other lawsuits where he's trying to shake down others. You know, years ago, we would call these bribes or illegal gratuities. But now that we have this individual in office, everything has changed. Now, what did we expect? We elected a man that had 34 felony convictions. Let me say that again, 34 felony convictions. And then he gets in front of the mics and the cameras and says that he is kicking out or deporting the worst of the worst. You know, Mr. President, somebody said if you self-deport, they won't have to come hunt you down. How about you, Melania, and your son, Barron, how about you self-deport? I'm not quite sure where you would go because I don't think any other country on the planet wants you. In fact, in this country, there's a growing number of Americans that don't want you. These are the MAGA folks. You know, the ones you let out of jail who attacked the U.S. Capitol and beat the hell out of police officers, and one of them died or two of them died. You know, those good people. Well, they're beginning to turn on you. And why? Well, let's think. You got elected on a promise of making America affordable again. But prices continue to rise. You said you're going to make America great again. Then you started this brilliant idea of tariffs. Some of them ridiculous rates. It just came off the top of your head. Not sure where you got these figures from. But everybody has said, every economist, every politician that has a working brain cell has said the tariffs will not work, Mr. President. Tariffs can be used as a tool. They are a short-term solution to this problem. But you said, I think you said, greatest word in the American lexicon is tariffs. Maybe that's the only word you knew or you understood in vocabulary in elementary school. But for the rest of us, we have a little bit of common sense. Our biggest trading partner is China. Are you hurting China with these tariffs? Or are you hurting the American people? We were told a few weeks back that ships were arriving basically empty. No cargo. How do you stimulate the economy? How do you make America great again? By basically putting people out of business and out of work. How exactly is that a sound plan? When Trump ran for office, there were a number of promises he made. And the only one that he seems to be even willing to address is deportation, mass deportation. I think he wants to kick out about 7,000 people a month. So we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of about 84,000 people a year. That's not bad. That's not a bad year for deportations. The fact is, he just wants to be able to say, I deported more than Obama. Obama was called, toward the end of his term, the deporter in chief. Because, yes, Obama, not widely publicized, but was kicking people out left and right. Well, Trump wants to beat that particular number. Maybe he wants to be called the deporter in chief. He also, from the time he was running for president, wanted to find ways to derail the Affordable Care Act. Not because it was bad, but because it would forever be linked to Barack Obama. If it was called Trump Care, it would be fine. In fact, he would be putting more money into it. But because it is Obamacare, or known as Obamacare, it's a bad program. It's a disaster. Well, what's more of a disaster? Giving people health care who had none or very little? Or cutting Medicaid and Medicare and taking it away from them, from their children, from pregnant women, from very small children, infants, neonatals. And yet, this is the man that's supposed to make America great again. Well, let's talk a little bit about this greatness. For many years, I guess since probably the end of World War II, America has been the lead nation on the planet, economically, politically, and certainly militarily. Since that time, America has spread its might around the world. We bomb at will. We just bombed Iran. And what threat did Iran pose to this country? Has anyone seen concrete proof that Iran had a nuclear device? Have we found the weapons of mass destruction from Iraq yet? Are we even still looking? But that's another story. The reality is that America lost whatever greatness it may have had a long time ago. The real power in the world today is in Asia, specifically China. China is beating America at its own game. You know, if you think about it, it was an American president by the name of Richard Milhous Nixon that said he opened up China. That was back in the 70s. During that time, China was a backwards agrarian society. They could barely produce enough food to feed themselves. Many of you may remember when they had a one-child policy because they simply couldn't afford to feed or didn't have the resources to feed more than one child. In fact, there was a time when Mao Zedong was telling people, all these birds we got flying around here, eat the birds. Things were that bad. In America, Chinese were disrespected. We used to make caricatures of Chinese people, jokes, all sorts of anti-Asian slurs. Chinese people were kicked out of this country after being brought here to build railroads. Eventually, the U.S. government had an official policy that specifically stated Chinese people could not enter the United States. Well, all these decades later, ain't nobody kicking out any Chinese. Nobody's making any jokes about Chinese. People say things, oh, Charlie do, Charlie don't do. Nobody's saying that anymore. Most of the products that we buy in Walmart, and forget Walmart, just about every store across this country, look at the label. Where's it coming from? China, Vietnam, Malaysia. They used to call it the Asian miracle. And why? Because all of these economies in Asia began to flourish. It was inexplicable, at least from an American standpoint, how we bombed Japan, the only country to drop a nuclear device on another country. We had that distinction. We dropped one on Hiroshima and then Nagasaki. We thought we had destroyed the Japanese people, but they bounced back. Japan and China are probably the two strongest economies in the region. America can no longer say we are the big dog on the block. I don't even know if we're on the block anymore. If you look at China, the way their cities are building rapidly, Chinese influence all around the world. America's not used to competing with anyone for resources. Now, they have to figure out a way to deal with the Chinese, with the North Koreans. Hell, we haven't even figured out Iran yet. I know the president said there were direct strikes on their nuclear sites. Well, now he seems to be backpedaling. Now he's saying, well, we may need to reach an agreement with Iran on their development of nuclear, I guess, energy or their nuclear research. Well, if you destroyed their nuclear sites or nuclear development sites like Fordo and Isfahan and others, why do you want to negotiate with them? What's to negotiate? And he said this before there was bomb damage assessment. So maybe this war isn't over as soon as we think. And for Israel, the only ally Trump really has left, well, these people are systematically annihilating the people of Gaza, the Palestinians, the rightful owners of the land. And yet, our president, or should I say, Donald Trump, who talks about peace. Well, why in hell aren't you attempting to make peace between the Palestinians and your buddy, Benjamin Netanyahu? He's coming to the White House on Monday. He's not coming to bring a 4th of July gift. He's coming because he needs more arms, more money, more assistance in his ongoing wars to take control of the region known as the Middle East. You know, we've been calling this place the Middle East now probably since the late 60s, early 70s. And we really call it the Middle East because we don't want to say that Israel actually sits on the continent of Africa. I know people's going to say, no, it's the Middle East. That's Asia. Show me on the map where Africa and Asia touch. Maybe a lot of people haven't paid attention to this. But the Bible says that the Israelites were on a 40-day walk to a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, where was that land? These people were walking from Africa. They left Egypt and they were going to Israel. So, in other words, you can walk from Israel to Africa. Yes, you can. For those people that are trapped in Gaza, if Egypt were to open the gates, specifically the Rafah crossing, and those people crossed that land bridge, or rather that barrier, they would be in Africa. Yes, Israel sits on the continent of Africa. But rather than admit that, we just created a whole new region on the planet called the Middle East. There's no other middle nowhere. There's no middle north. There's no middle south. Just a Middle East to appease one group of people. So Monday, Mr. Netanyahu will be here with his hand out. And of course, he'll be talking about more arms. Because of course, he's going to say that this ongoing threat posed by Iran. But it wasn't Iran that fired missiles into Israel. Just the contrary. Israel firing missiles into Iran, into the major Iranian cities. And for what? Because Benjamin Netanyahu decided that if, and I do stress if, the Iranians have nuclear capabilities, we're going to destroy them. Well, Mr. Netanyahu, who in the hell gave you the right to do that? If somebody were to say drop a bag of flour on Israel, of course, Israel's ready to bomb away. But you can go and attack a sovereign nation based on your belief, which could be unfounded. And not just that. If you go back 30 years, you find Benjamin Netanyahu openly talking about bombing Iran. Well, did Iran have nuclear weapons 30 years ago? I don't know, but I know who did. I know that Israel has a huge cache of nuclear weapons. It is believed they've had weapons since as far back as the Kennedy administration. And yet, they're saying that nobody else in this region can be nuclear armed. Unless, of course, they're going to use them against one another. So Pakistan and India, both nuclear armed, but they're also enemies. Just to ensure that no one will side with the people, the Arab nations, and confront Israel and force Israel to the table to truly negotiate. There was a term during the Cold War known as détente, where the nuclear powers had agreed we both possess enough nuclear firepower to obliterate this planet. So because of that, we have reached essentially a strategic stalemate where nobody is really ready to push the button against the other. Maybe that's why Israel doesn't want anyone in the region to have that capability. Because then Israel will be very hesitant to attack. Because they know that the other side has just the same capability and they can wipe out Tel Aviv and other cities just as Israel could wipe out Tehran and other cities in Iran. So let's get back to Donald Trump. He, it's just amazing how he has this effect on the Republican Party. And not just the Republican Party per se, but people across this country, Republican voters. Some of them don't even realize that they are in the president's crosshairs. they're not going to, or maybe some of them will never wake up. But those that do, it'll be too late. What do you do when the doctor says, I can no longer accept your Medicaid? What do you do when you go to the grocery store and the food subsidies that they gave you on your card, nothing is being deposited? What do you do when jobs that the president said will be so plentiful don't materialize? I saw a jobs report that said somewhere in the neighborhood of about, I think about 100 and in the ballpark of 150,000 jobs were created. Well, let's be realistic. The government doesn't create jobs at all. It is private industry that creates the jobs. The government is supposed to assist them in doing that by maintaining a stable economy, keeping interest rates low and things of that nature, so that business will reinvest in this country. But of these 150 or so odd jobs, what sort of jobs are they? There's a couple of new Starbucks that are going up. One just opened 3 days ago, and there's a few more set to open within weeks. Those are jobs. Are those the jobs that we're talking about? And don't get me wrong, Starbucks has a pretty nice package in terms of competitive pay. I think they give them a 401k, some educational benefits. By today's standards, Starbucks don't look too bad. But what about the high-paying jobs? What about the ones that these kids who will be graduating from college, in years to come? Do we suppose they're going to work at Starbucks? That they're going to work in supermarkets and chain stores? Do we think they're going to be pickers at Amazon? Where are the high-paying jobs? And why do we have less and less high-paying jobs? Could it be because we're not investing properly in education? So for IT jobs, where are most of the people coming from that work in IT? Well, if you guess New York, you're wrong. If you guess Silicon Valley, you're wrong there too. These people are coming from India. The Indian government recognized the explosion in that particular sector of the economy. So people in India started studying IT, computer technology, things that our students don't seem to be very much interested in. So we have a lot of people coming from India who are going to take those jobs in that sector of the economy. That's if Trump lets them in. He says that he wants to close the borders to particular people. So who are these particular people? If you're black and brown, you're not going to be able to hang around. But if you are a Caucasian fleeing this so-called genocide in South Africa, oh, you can come here, the doors are wide open. But now, these guys are farmers. Where are they going to get farmland in order to farm? Let's think now. We have literally hundreds of thousands of farmers who grow soybeans. Those soybeans would be bought by China. Now the president, or should I say Trump, has this, I guess, in his mind, genius idea to place these huge tariffs on the Chinese government. Well, now these soybeans that these farmers would sell to China, that would be their profit for the year. So they could buy farm equipment, pay mortgages, taxes, seed, all of these things. But with the tariffs in place, China's not buying their soybeans. How many of you want to bet that in months, a year or so, these farmers are going to have to give up their farms? How long will it be before the banks begin to foreclose? And is it far-fetched to believe that some of these South African farmers are going to end up on some of the farmland that was once owned by Americans? Do you think they're coming here for nothing? I know it's difficult for us to do in this country. And when I say difficult to do, I mean think. Because we're not trained to think in America. We're taught in school not to think, not to question, to follow the leader. You ask someone, say from customer service, you get them on the phone and you ask them a question. If the answer is not on the script that is in front of them, what do they say? I'll have to call a supervisor or a manager. You don't have to ask a difficult question. 30, 40 years ago, customer service had the answers. But today, no, they don't want you to think. They don't want you to question. They want you to follow a script. How can America be a great nation, a powerful nation, a prosperous nation if all we do is follow a script? If no one asks the hard questions, if no one gets or seeks clarification, who's seeking clarification on this alleged big, beautiful bill? Why didn't the people who are the fiscally responsible people, and I'm talking about the Republican Party, the Republicans who are the party of small government, well, aren't they the ones who are out rounding up people who are innocent of any criminal activity? Aren't they the ones who just opened up a new detention facility in Florida that they call Alligator Alcatraz? You know, I saw that the other day and I immediately began to think, and I'm talking about the Alligator Alcatraz. What came to mind was, this is the new Auschwitz. This is the new Bergen-Belsen. This is the new Treblinka. Oh, I know. People are going to say, oh, you can't compare Trump to Hitler. Well, there are other people I can compare him to. But Hitler's not a bad choice. How far off are we from what Hitler did and what Trump's doing? Hitler rounded up Jews, gypsies, gays, political dissidents. Anyone who didn't agree with him was rounded up. Trump has been rounding up black and brown people. Anyone who did not support Netanyahu's Middle East policy or Northeast Africa policy, rounded up, arrested. Then Trump entered into a deal with the president of El Salvador, told him to build more prisons because next we'll be sending Americans. That's right, Americans. The Constitution gives you the right to due process. But that's not what Trump is saying. Trump is basically saying, what he said the other day. He made it pretty perfectly clear. He said, I decide what makes America great. And what if what makes America great is to deport Americans wholesale? No hearing, no due process, just like with these so-called illegal migrants. Find them, round them up, put them on a van, and drive to the airport. Drive right past the courthouse. When Trump was asked about Alligator Alley and the possible conditions that could exist in this prison, I mean, this is a swamp surrounded by alligators, huge mosquitoes, and other swamp creatures. Trump's answer was, I don't care. I guess because he figures no one he knows, no one that runs in his circle will be in that particular prison. It'll just be those people, the people that don't look like him. You know, it's interesting that the way our laws are written in this country. So the average person, if you have one felony conviction, you are barred from joining the military, from certain state, federal, and local civil service jobs. And that's with one felony. And you have to think, a lot of times criminal activity takes place in your youth. You make a mistake at 16, 17, should you pay for it the rest of your life? They're kids. We can't expect them to understand and perceive the world the way we do. They haven't developed the capacities yet. In fact, complete brain development doesn't happen until a person is 25 to 30 years old. But nonetheless, we now charge them as adults. So we lock them up and we throw away the key. That's one felony. We tell them you can't have this job. You can't work here. You can't join the military. Trump, on the other hand, he can command the military. 34 felony convictions, and he can order a strike on Iran. If that sounds crazy, that's because it is. What happened to America? What happened to a time when we thought our politicians were some of the smartest people? What happened in this country that we no longer care about integrity, about trustworthiness, about honesty? What does that say about us as American people? When did we stop giving a damn? Yes, I know people in this country were desperate. But were we so desperate that we would put a demon in office? Was there no one else that we could put there that would be responsive to the American people, that would listen to them, that would enact policy that would make America fair? Because let's be realistic, it's not. It's not fair for poor people, for working class people. It's not fair for black, for brown, for women. There are people, and I'm talking Caucasian people, in Appalachia who are dirt poor. They literally have nothing, but they're solid Republican voters. They've lived through Republican administrations And what benefit did they get? Nothing. Some of the poorest states in this country are red states or Republican states. These people are suffering, and their suffering is only going to be amplified now. Those folks that were relying upon Medicaid, Medicare, food subsidies, do you know that the, the I don't want to say the president, let's just say Trump. Trump wants to take things like milk away from school kids. How much you going to save, Donald, by taking away their milk? How much does America save by taking away SNAP programs that feed people that supported you? Is that where all the fraud is and waste that you called it? It's not fraud that you took a $400 million plane from Qatar. Well, that's not fraud. It's not fraud that you're shaking down law firms, that you're shaking down TV stations like CBS. That's not fraud. That's not illegal gratuity. That's not graft. But what is waste is taking away milk from school children, taking away health care from women and young children, babies. I'd like to have some people, Republican voters, who not only supported Trump, but who still support Trump. Explain to me your rationale. And please don't tell me about Joe Biden. Well, Biden did this. Yes, we know what Biden did. However, there's one problem. The problem is time. Time moves in one direction. It doesn't back up and give us time to correct our mistakes. Time moves forward. We have to deal with the now, the here, the now, and tomorrow. We can't go back and change the election of 2020. We're talking about right now, today. We're talking about life and death. So for those Republicans that still support the president's agenda, that still think that from this mess he has created, that greatness will somehow emerge, please call the station. The number is 888-304-4401. Again, 888-304-4401. Please call me and tell me exactly how, from this mess that we're in, we're going to be great again. This big, beautiful bill that was signed today, the Republican leadership has been lying to you, telling you about all these jobs that are going to be created, how the economy will suddenly rebound. They never tell you how. All of the jobs we've lost over the years, how do we get back to greatness? How do we strengthen America when America's up for sale? Trump said that he does not think foreign government should be in control of things like the American steel industry. Well, he just approved the sale of a steel company right here in Pennsylvania to Japan. He said he didn't like it. But now it's okay. Perhaps he's going to get a kickback. But how does that strengthen America? These are going to be jobs that will benefit Japan. Oh, sure, they may hire some American workers to work in the plant, but who's going to be the management? Who's going to determine the amount of steel that's produced? Certainly won't be American or American companies. Right here in Pennsylvania, 45 minutes south of here, we had Bethlehem Steel that for generations produced high grade, high quality steel. Now we get our steel from China. One more point on China. I hear a lot of people who supported Trump and who may still do talk about we want our country back. I'm curious, who took it from you? It wasn't the sort of taking that the Native Americans endured. See, nobody showed up on these shores with warships. Nobody showed up with advanced weaponry and planted a flag and said, this is ours now. Nobody came up with this concept called manifest destiny and decided to expand westward from 13 colonies to expand from sea to shining sea. The song sounds good, but how many people, native indigenous people, were slaughtered in this trek across this country? I guess we can't say much about Israel because what Israel is doing, we've done. So have all of the European allies. We want to blame China for our economic woes. But who sold Bethlehem Steel? Who's been sending American jobs overseas? Was that the Chinese? Or was it our government that approved these companies to move abroad? And now we say we want our country back. But again, who took it from you and how did they take it? These people that took this country allegedly, well, what did these suspects look like? I would bet that they were Caucasian men in very expensive suits who sat around in boardrooms and decided, in order to increase our profits, we need to cut benefits like pensions, like health care. We need to replace it with things like a 401k that they may or may not contribute to. We need to cut the workforce. So they came up with real cute sayings like, oh, multitasking. You know what multitasking is? You're doing the job of 2 or 3 people for one salary, and you think that's a good thing? You think that's a smart thing? Folks, greatness begins within you. And if there's no greatness in you, no greatness can come out of you. And what greatness are we putting into the next generation? What greatness is coming out of this country? Is anybody paying attention? We're talking greatness, and yet we have young men that start fires and then shoot and kill the firemen who are responding. Is that someone's concept of greatness? This country is falling apart. In fact, it's bursting apart at the seams. And the ultimate demise of America is being sped up by one man, the man that was elected to carry this country forward. How far forward have we moved since he took office? Like I said, he and his family, they're doing quite well. They're making enormous profits. But for the rest of us, how are we doing? How is your family doing? What will be the result after this bill goes into effect? Trump's going to sign it tomorrow. And by Monday, the cuts will probably be slowly be implemented at first. Folks, if you are not aware of what's going on, if you haven't figured it out yet, I don't think you ever will. Folks, this is known as robbery. This is stick up without a gun. And this is what many of you, millions of you, asked for. You wanted him. You simply could not have a black woman in the White House, but you would take this dude. And what has he done for you? And if he ain't done nothing yet, he ain't definitely going to do nothing now, because he's got what he wants. He's got a $4 trillion tax cut that's going to land on his desk for him to sign. That means he won't pay the taxes, but you will. That means he will go on profiting, but you won't. Folks, for those of you that say you love this country, what are you doing to show your love for America? He always says he loves America. America first. Well, have you looked at this bill? Cutting off Medicaid, health care, is that America first? Taking food out of the mouths of hungry people, is that how you put Americans first? Are we that stupid? Are we that naive? Well, folks, we are going to see what happens with this bill after Trump signs it tomorrow. You know, for me, it is, I guess you could say, I already know what's going to happen. No, I'm not a clairvoyant. Don't have the ability to read minds. Don't have a crystal ball. But I do have pretty good memory. See, I grew up in New York. I remember Trump when he was young. He was a liar and a thief then, and he's a liar and a thief now. Not much has changed about him. Well, he's gotten more arrogant. He's gotten more bold in his lies. But other than that, nothing else has changed. I remember when he built his big, beautiful casino. Big, beautiful, the words he likes to use. Ask him what happened to his big, beautiful Trump Taj Mahal. Ask him what happened to his big, beautiful Trump University. Ask him about Trump Airlines. Ask him about his business dealings in New York, how well that went. Ask him if he owns all of the things or properties that bear his name. Well, don't ask him, because he's going to lie to you anyway. He's never going to tell the truth. But the reality is he doesn't even own Trump Towers. He might have, an apartment there, but he doesn't own it. Anyway, folks, that was my hour to sort of unpack some of this stuff that has been bothering me. I knew the bill would pass. I thought that it would take a little longer. I guess what we saw was political theater, the Republicans pretending that they were not going to pass this bill. Because let's be realistic, they ain't got no integrity. They have no allegiance to their constituency. They're doing this because one man asked for it, and that's Trump. They don't care that it's going to affect you and your lives. They don't care about how many Americans will be kicked off of health care. They don't care about how many people are going to die. Hell, they said as much. Joni Ernst went to a town hall meeting and said, "Oh, we're all going to die." Yeah, that's a real smart answer. But we don't want to die next year or next month because we can't go to a damn doctor. So, folks, as I said, I wanted to unpack some of this stuff. And I hope that something I said today strikes a chord. Because let's be realistic, we're not going to survive in this country. At least a lot of us won't. Things are going to get decidedly worse. If you think things were bad before, just wait. You ain't seen nothing yet. America has never had a leader like Donald J. Trump. In fact, it's been a long time since the world saw someone the likes of Trump. It's been decades, but now that same mentality, that same evil has been resurrected, and it's in the White House. And every day it seeks more power, more people to bow down and kiss the ring. And people have been lining up to do that. I'm not quite sure why. What are they afraid of? What will Trump do to them? But apparently the Republican Party is afraid. Afraid of a man with a comb over and orange skin. I don't know. But anyway, folks, that was the message for July 3rd. And tomorrow, America will celebrate Independence Day. Well, for those of you that are celebratory, go out and enjoy yourselves. For folks that look like me, that wasn't exactly our Independence Day. We had nothing to celebrate. It was still a very harsh form of slavery. Well, as I said, for those of you that do celebrate, go out and have a good time. And then on Monday, pay close attention to what's going to come out of Washington. Anyway, I hope you all have a good weekend, and I'll see you back here next Thursday for another Thoughtful Thursday.